Maybe you're curious as to some of the things that change in your Army lifestyle when you go in as a single soldier and then get married, or if you're in the Army as a married soldier and then get divorced. Well, stick around because that's what I'll be talking about in this video. What's up, my friends? Welcome to an all-new video. I'm U.S. Army veteran ThatChrisChaos, and in today's video I'm talking about what basically happens if, let's say, you join the Army, you're single, then you get married, what kind of things change on the Army lifestyle, or if you are a married soldier and then get divorced, what things change. Now, if you're curious about those kind of things, but also want to learn about the Army, maybe you're wanting to join, maybe you're already in, maybe you're just a veteran that's curious or just a civilian that's curious and you want to learn more, well then maybe think about subscribing to my channel if you are not already. Also think about clicking on that bell to get alerts as soon as new videos go live, including live streams, and become a part of that awesome notification platoon. Also check out social media down in the description down below. Follow me on Instagram, ThatChrisChaos. Just look for ThatChrisChaos. You can find me very easily. So let's talk about this type of situation and what kind of things kind of happen when you're in these situations. Let's start off with that first one. You come into the Army, you're a single soldier and you find the right person and you want to get married. Well, what kind of things start to change? Let's start off with just before you kind of get married. Maybe you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend and things are developing pretty well and you're getting engaged or you're having talks about marriage. How does it work for maybe if you want to live together? Because that's sometimes, important. Some people want to kind of see what it's like to live with each other before they actually make it official and marry that person. So, as a single soldier, you're living in the barracks, right? Unless you're like an officer or something like that. But I was enlisted. I try to speak to you guys as the enlisted side of things, especially on active duty. So that's what I'm kind of talking about. So also a lot of this doesn't necessarily apply in the same way for reserves or National Guard, but I was active duty, so that's where we're kind of keeping the concept to. So active duty single soldiers live in the barracks. Now, if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend and you want to spend the night with them and they live off base, not a big deal. They don't really restrict you in saying that, no, you have to spend every single night in the barracks, at least when you're at your actual duty station. Obviously that's different when you're in basic training or AIT, but I'm talking about when you're actually at your official unit, you're out of initial training. So if your boyfriend or girlfriend lives off base, that's fine. You can go stay with them. You probably could even at a certain point in time, maybe even kind of move in with them. You usually have to get kind of permission from your leadership to say, hey, I'm gonna be moving out of the barracks and living with my boyfriend or girlfriend off base and maybe eventually getting married, hopefully, Now with that, you're not gonna get BAH and BAS, right? The only people that are gonna get that are married individuals, higher ranking individuals, officers, those kind of individuals. If you're just an E1, E2, E4, sometimes even E5, E6, whatever, you're just gonna have to pay out of your pocket to try to help that boyfriend or girlfriend pay rent and pay bills. So with that, you usually have to still maintain that barracks room. So that means that even though you don't live in that barracks room, if they are doing cleanup, they're doing a GI party, whatever the case is, you are still responsible for helping and cleaning up. Now, if your boyfriend or girlfriend is also in the military, then it becomes pretty complicated. Because when you live in the barracks, you can't really have people spend the night with you, right? So you're not really gonna be able to go and spend the night at that person's barracks room, and they're not gonna come and spend the night at your barracks room or anything like that, because you're not allowed to have overnight guests in the barracks. There may be some units that are a little bit more lenient with it, but majority, if not all units, don't allow that. So then it gets really complicated. Maybe you guys are going to, just put your income together and try to get an inexpensive apartment off base and get permission from your leadership and still apply to the same rules of you still have to maintain those barracks rooms most likely and try to get an apartment together that way. That could be a potential thing that maybe you do, but sometimes it depends on your rank. A lot of times if you're an E1 and that other person's an E1, that might be a little difficult to do. So it definitely becomes a lot harder to try to kind of get that feel out process and living with that individual before you decide to actually make it official and get married if you're both in the military. Now let's say now it's time and you want to get married, whether you're going to do a ceremony or just going to go to the courthouse, whatever. Along with that, people usually ask, can I get married in my dress uniform? And yes, as long as you're wearing it correctly and properly and not going to do something that could give a bad image to the United States Army because you're in uniform, then sure, they don't really care too much as long as you're doing everything properly. So whether it's a ceremony or it's the courthouse, just to make it official, you still have to get that marriage certificate, make a copy of it, turn it to your leadership. Also probably worth noting is sometimes before you get to that process, there are some leaderships that have some requirements before you actually make it official. Sometimes they want you to sit down with a chaplain. Sometimes they want you and your spouse or your potential spouse, right, to sit down with a chaplain, or you to receive some kind of counseling from your leadership to make sure you know your responsibilities and what you're gonna have to do and all that kind of stuff. That's not like necessarily every unit, so it's usually a good idea to check with your leadership to say, hey, I'm engaged to this individual, we're gonna get married. Is there anything unit level wise I need to do before we go and do this ceremony or go to the courthouse? So make sure to check on that. Like I said, not always a requirement, but some units do want you to kind of do that process, and if you don't, they might get upset. I don't know how extreme they might take that, but it's best just to make sure to do things the right way. So you turn in that copy of your marriage certificate. They start the process to make sure to get everything corrected for your pay, so that you can start receiving BAH and BAS and all that stuff. And then there's some other things on the side that you're also gonna have to do. You're gonna have to enroll your spouse into the TRICARE system, so they have the health care. You're gonna have to probably go to the DEER's office to get them an ID card and all that kind of stuff. So there's little things here and there, but officially, once you have that marriage certificate copy to turn in, then you can kind of start all that process and get everything kind of situated. You can then either apply for on-post housing or just simply get an apartment off post. Maybe you already have one because you've been living with that individual, whatever the case is. Now that makes it official to where if you come up on orders to, say, go from Fort Carson, Colorado to Fort Hood, Texas, Fort Irwin, California, wherever, right, then that individual can come with you. Whereas if you were a single soldier, the Army isn't gonna pay to bring your boyfriend or girlfriend to wherever you're going to. So now you're official, you're married, and they kind of follow with you, obviously, for places that are allowed to have your spouse with you at those duty stations. And I say, if you can bring your spouse with you kind of a thing, because there are some assignments that are like hardship duty assignments where you're not allowed to bring your spouse with you. Korea is like that. Sometimes it depends on where you go in Korea, obviously deployments and those kind of things. So now let's say you're in a situation where you're married and something happens, things don't work out, and you get divorced. Now, if you're in that situation, you're getting separated, you're getting divorced, and things aren't working out, the other spouse doesn't want you staying in that same house or apartment or whatever, you can go back to the barracks at that point. Usually just tell your leadership, hey, me and my spouse are not getting along, we're gonna separate, we're gonna get a divorce, whatever the case is, I need a place to stay. And they will provide you with a place in the barracks for you to stay. If things end up working out, move back out of the barracks, move back in your spouse, good to go. But let's talk about the process if it carries on and you do get divorced. So once it goes through and it becomes an official thing that you're divorced, well, now you no longer start receiving BAS and BAH anymore. You move back into the barracks. Your spouse no longer has TRICARE benefits. I think there might be like a grace period before it kind of just drops off, and then probably the ID card probably doesn't get renewed anymore. So you go through that process, and now you're back to being a single soldier. You're no longer receiving BAS, BAH, you're back to eating in the chow hall, maybe without having to pay for it, those kind of things. Now, if you have children with your spouse, then it gets a little bit more complicated, and there's a little bit more kind of to it now. So if you and your spouse have children together and you have custody, and maybe you're sharing custody of the child, or maybe you have full custody, well, then in that case, you would still continue to receive BAS and BAH and can continue to live off base. And that's obviously because if you have a child and you want to have visitation and they're spending the weekends with you or whatever the case is, you can't really do that in the barracks. So essentially you'd be still having the same kind of benefits in a way as if you were married. The only thing that now changes is you're just not with that spouse anymore. So essentially it's pretty much still in the same kind of ballpark or the same kind of situation as if you're married. That also changes things now to where if your ex-spouse is not willing to move somewhere else, you can't either. So unless you want to, give up custody or something like that. So if you want to re-enlist to change duty stations or something like that, well then, it's going to be a little bit difficult to do that. You're going to have to either give up custody because you can't just take your kids with you unless they want to give up custody. And, there's a lot more that kind of go involved with that. So it usually kind of ties someone down to that duty assignment. But the same thing goes for that spouse, whatever. They can't just go and take off back to their hometown or take off with the children or whatever, because you probably have some kind of custody agreement unless you're giving up full custody and, allowing that person to move somewhere else. You can still deploy, you can still go to the field and all that kind of stuff like that, but probably changing duty assignments isn't going to actually happen unless you guys make some kind of arrangements to, change the custody agreement with your children. Or if that other individual also agrees to move to that location because you're going to, Fort Hood or from Fort Carson or wherever the case is, and that other individual is willing to, move everybody to that new location. The Army isn't going to pay for your ex-spouse to move though, so it's going to have to be on their own. Now, there's also a couple things that probably are somewhat related that I feel it's probably important to kind of bring up in this conversation. The situation of if you are married but your spouse isn't staying with you, or situation of single parenthood. So that first situation, let's say if you are married but your spouse chose to not want to go to your duty assignment with you. Maybe you're from California and they want to stay in California. Maybe they have a great job and they want to stay in that area. Maybe they're going to school, whatever the case is. And you go to, let's say, Fort Carson by yourself. Well, now you're in this category of what they kind of call a geographical bachelor. Technically, they don't really have that term anymore, because what that usually meant was that the geographical bachelor living away from their family could live in the barracks if they wished to do that. That has gone away. I believe it was like 2013, 2014, something like that, where they got away with that they used to allow, and now they will not allow you to live in the barracks. You're still gonna have to go get on-post housing or off-post housing. You're gonna see BAH for where you're currently at, not for where your spouse is at, and you have to just pay rent or mortgage, whatever, for those two locations on your own. You don't get like extra BAH because your family's staying in this place and you're here. You have to just essentially provide for both. So be aware of that. Now, if it's a situation where you can't bring your family, then that's different, right? If it's a deployment or it's Korea or something where you can't bring your family, then that's different. But if it's a situation where, like stateside, where you're allowed to bring your family with you and your family just chooses not to go with you, then you're in that situation. The other thing I wanted to kind of mention that's kind of related is the single parenthood, right? If you are a single parent and you want to join the Army, well, technically you can't if you want to go active duty. You can, however, join the reserves and National Guard. They're, have a different kind of process and everything like that, and different, way that it works out okay if you are a single parent. But if you're active duty, it doesn't work out to join. If you become a single parent because of getting divorced or whatever, that's different. They allow you to still do that. Technically, if you wanted to get out early, you have options to be able to do that. I believe that's how Ice-T got out of the Army early or something like that, I think. One of those famous individuals, they were in that situation where they had a child with someone, they were not married, and they chose to get out of the Army early to be able to take care of their child. So if you become a single parent because you got divorced, you technically could have that possible option depending on some different variables in there. I've known someone that was in that situation where they were not married, but they got pregnant while in the Army. They didn't get married to that individual. The father was not in the relationship, was not in the child's life, and she made it work for as long as she could, but the person that took care of her child when she would go to the field or deployments was her mother, and eventually her mother was getting older, a little bit harder for her to take care of the child when they were gone to the field or deployments, so she, executed that option to get out early so that she could provide for her child because her mother was not really capable of being able to effectively do that anymore. So I'm sure there's probably other questions you might have, maybe other scenarios you want to know about, different other kind of situations. I can't possibly probably think of every single question you probably have in your mind. So that's what the comment section is for. If you have a question about other scenarios, something similar to this, of either coming into the Army as a single soldier and then getting married, or coming into the Army as a married soldier and then getting divorced, or whatever the case is, leave those questions down in the comment section down below. I'll do my best to answer what I can. Maybe some of my viewers out there that are veterans or currently in the military can help me out and answer some of those questions the best they can. And we can get you some answers, hopefully. Also, maybe for those of you that are currently in the Army, or maybe some veterans yourselves, and you have some other tips for some of those situations or whatever, and you like to provide some more tips that maybe I wasn't able to provide in this video, drop those down in the comment section as well. Now, as always, if you enjoyed this video, definitely hit that thumbs up. If you want to interact with some more individuals that maybe want to join the Army, maybe some people who are currently in the Army, maybe some veterans, whatever the case is, I definitely recommend hitting up the link down in the description down below for the Discord channel. Join the Awesome Chaos Army Discord, interact with all those individuals. There's a lot of fun things you can do in there, and just engage with the community. So definitely check that out, as well as other social media links down below to include like my Instagram, all that kind of stuff. Now, if you want to check out some more stuff, I got some more content over here. I got a short little playlist of just some random stuff that maybe you didn't think about, that maybe you want to learn and didn't even know it, right? So check out this short little playlist that I got right here. Or you can also check out the latest upload right down there. Maybe you're watching this video in the future and maybe you missed some videos. So check these out. Thanks so much for watching. I'm ThatChrisChaos. I'll see you next time. See ya.